What a bullet! Scott Arfield! He's been training that recently, and all the Burnley players run to the...
Hello everyone and welcome along to the latest episode of TurfCast Podcast here on the TurfCast Podcast YouTube channel, and of course TurfCast Podcast with me, Joe Redmond, and my co-host Nathan James Rogers. No game this week, of course. The Luton Town game was postponed thanks to their stadium improvements, but we're not going to leave you wanting. We're going to keep the big interviews coming. Of course, we had a big interview recently with Matt Hodgson. We've got another big interview coming up with you today with Russell Ball, the Director of Fan Experience at Burnley Football Club. So sit back, relax. There's no Burnley game this weekend. It doesn't matter. We've still got some TurfCast for you though.
Evening, welcome to the TurfCast podcast. I'm joined by, obviously, Joe Redmond, you know him well, and I am joined by Russell Ball, the Director of Fan Experience from Burnley Football Club. How are you doing, Russell?
Really well. Great to be on.
Good. Thanks for joining us. Let's say we really appreciate you taking your time to come and talk to us and, jump on TurfCast and give us a little insight in what goes on behind the scenes at the football club and your role. We just really appreciate taking your time.
Pleasure. It's good to be on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on, Russell, really. We've been connected on LinkedIn for quite some time, so it's good to finally get to talk as well. But first of all, obviously, we know that your role is a Director of Fan Experience. Just tell the listeners more what exactly that role is and what it entails.
Happy to, yeah. So a lot of people ask me that question because it's not necessarily a title that's well known or understood. And I think the basis of trying to understand my role is understanding that we have American ownership. An American customer service, I think, generally, for anyone who's been to the United States will understand is a cut above generally where we are. And so when American ownership comes into a British club like this, one of the things that they're keen to improve is customer relations. And so my job, my main role really is helping to transform and oversee and make sure we have an effective fan policy that allows the experience of coming to a match day. Our goal is to have the best match day experience in football. You know, we make no apology for that. And so we've got quite a way to go, but we hopefully, and perhaps we'll discuss some of that tonight, some of the things that we've done that would hopefully make that journey a bit better. So my role is basically categorize where if anything good happens on match day, it's somebody else. And if it's anything bad that's happened, it's my fault. It's probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
So,
Like it. So give us a brief sort of rundown of your sort of experience in, your working life. How did you get to where you are today? Like, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what your past experience around what does that translate to in this current role you've got?
I think like many people who end up working in football, the passion, first of all, comes from loving football. My experience previously professionally was I spent 5 or 6 years working in the City of London before then turning to property. And I owned property companies in London for the last 25 years, which I sold a few years before coming into Burnley Football Club. So actually, funny enough, not related to football or fan experience in any way, shape or form. However, both my jobs were customer service based, really, because servicing clients' needs all the time.
Good.
Yeah, fair enough. So we will talk about match day experience in just a second. But talk us through like a day in the life of your role at the Turf then. So obviously alarm goes off, I presume, at 5 a.m. You're keen into work straight away. But what sort of things do you do on a day-to-day basis at the club?
Yeah, great question. The great thing about this job is that it's so varied. Every day is literally different. And I know that's a bit cliched these days, but it is really so different. But things that you'd expect to handle, really. So within my team, we've got the supporter liaison officer, and we've also got the disciplinary access officer, and then all of the matchday staff that are associated with those roles. And then I've got visibility over, obviously, seeing how everything is running on match days. I work closely with Doug Metcalf, who's, of course, Director of Operations here and puts on the games, and making sure that the hospitality offerings, the concourse offerings, the fan zone, all of that. So all of the preparation work for those on match days is what we deal with. I also deal with customer complaints, concerns around the service, anything that might be just helping any fan of the club to feel closer and connected to making sure we're resolving any of their challenges. But forward looking, also making sure that we're preparing new ways to engage with our fans, whether that be digitally or face-to-face, whether it's at the games, here or abroad, wherever that might be. It's just making sure that we're reaching out to as many of our fan base as we can. But at the same stretch, an average day for me can be entailed in any number of business meetings in relation to the running of the business. Obviously, the football club, like any football club, is pretty much broken down into two sections: the playing and the non-playing side. Primarily, we're on the non-playing side, but of course, I also have all of the players, their families, the coaches, the backroom staff to take care of when it comes to match day as well. They need to have the very best match day experience, and certainly, as far as Vincent is concerned, providing all of those people alongside the fans with a good match day experience is imperative to what we call our 1%. What's my 1% in contributing to the win? And that's part of it. So it's organizing all of that. But as you can imagine, in any business, and football's no different, there are a million things by virtue of their diversity that come up every day that create different things. We're also constantly developing a strategy and moving the club forward. We have absolutely a desire to achieve our goal, which is to have the best, for the fans to have the best experience in football.
Yeah, fair enough. Obviously, it's a bit of a buzzword at the minute, match day experience. You've said it yourself. I've said it several times already in this interview. I remember Alan Pearce saying it quite early on in his time here. There's a lot been done outside the ground, hasn't there? In recent months, obviously a lot of roadworks and stuff, but the pavements are now looking a lot better. There's the town to turf thing. So what other things are you doing to try and improve the match day experience, and what things can we see coming up in the next year or two to improve that match day experience for the fans?
So if you look back, I came in originally with ALK under the new ownership. And it was very clear right from the onset that there were small things that we can do that would have a big impact. So if you take, for instance, we had, I forget the number now, but I think it was 13 different types of stock brick that we used around the stadium. So all in different shades of yellow, green, mold, and other colors. And just tying all of those together by painting it that sort of charcoal black, making things feel a bit more industrial up the Harry Potts Way area. Those are sorts of things that when we first came in were just small but important things. And then, of course, the first thing that we did in terms of the lounges is that we put in the long side lounge, the boxes, and the centenary. You know, I mean, it was amazing to us that when we turned up, it wasn't really any way of a corporate guest hiring a box. They had petitions that you could create areas, but there was no actual box. So that was obviously a massive project. And then not long after that, it was very obvious to us that the outside fan zone, which, speaking frankly, was a loss-making entity, by the time you paid for everything that was going on there and the couple of hundred people that showed up, it was literally a damp experience, right? So we decided to move the fan zone inside and just test that and see how that went. And if you forward wind to the City game, we had 2,400 people that went through that fan zone on Friday night. So again, we put the big screen in there, and then of course there was the whole improving the in-bowl and out-bowl experience with the LED. And I know at the time we were under fire a little bit because we spent quite a bit of money on that, and I think we got more than a few emails suggesting that we should have bought a player with that money. And I hope that is, if you like, a demonstration of what the vision and the strategy of the ownership is that yes, of course we could have gone and bought a £4 million player, but actually the revenue that's generated even in the last 2.5 years has helped us to provide for far more than just one player, and has also given us huge commercial opportunities. We're partnered there with ADI, who have provided all of that, and it's been a great partnership that. And we have the capacity to improve that beyond where it is now. Then, of course, ahead of this season, we put in the new Jimmy McElroy suite, which has just gone in, and then, of course, in more recent weeks as well, the self-ordering units that have gone into some of the concourses, food offerings have changed. And there are other things that have gone on sort of behind the scenes, small things like where the players now come in. All of that's been tied in with the charcoal paint, much better, much more professional looking, better for interviews, better for fan engagement. When they come up, we want to create an autograph area there. So it's sort of, as you look forward, it's like, how can we get the fans to get more involved with the playing side without interrupting what it is that Vincent wants his players to be doing on match day? And that's obviously quite a difficult balancing act. But we've increased the number of hospitality seats as a result of the improvements. So there's been a lot that's gone on, and obviously the Town to Turf project has been, really fantastic. And again, Doug's overseen all of the implementation of that, and we managed to get just about ourselves ready for at least Harry Potts Way, mostly for the City game, and obviously the bridge closures have been a bit challenging, but hopefully that will improve. So lots to go on. And all I can tell you is that the vision of the board, certainly of Alan, is to continue to improve to make that experience. And it's a funny one, though, because you don't want to lose the really authentic feel of the stadium. It's a really fine balance that, because even when you've got, like the Daniel Levy and others that come, they can't get away from the fact that, we're right on the pitch. He can hear everything that Vincent is shouting and everything that all the fans are shouting, and you're right on the pitch.
Yeah.
You go to Tottenham, it's a fantastic stadium, it's £1 billion stadium, but you feel like you're hovering above the play. It's not real. So, it's an incredible facility, make no mistake, but it cost £1 billion. So and that was what 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So what's that now? 1.2?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of money. So we're not getting the Turf Moor Mega Ball anytime soon. No,
we're not planning on sliding any pictures in if anyone's worried now.
No, I just wanted to add to the match day experience. I noticed that on Friday when I went back, the feel of the place just felt a bit more polished, a bit more refined. It felt a bit more Premier League. That's probably the only way I can describe it. And and I don't really, I've always sort of wanted us to keep the charm of the football club because it's so important, but have the little tweaks here and there are key. And I think you are, I'm not just doing this just to blow smoke up, the club's backside or whatever, but just you're nailing the little things, you're doing the little things right, I think, and it's working and it's building to make this bigger, better, image of the club. And I think when visiting fans come and they see what it was like, what it is like, I think they're going to, notice a big difference and stuff. So yeah.
We survey fans, as you know, on the way out or after email and so forth, but we do that with the away fans as well. And it's incredible that probably the biggest sentiment we get is that it feels like football should feel.
Yeah.
Now you can read into that, interpret that as you wish, but for me, that's a compliment. That's, sometimes it's good to look forward and sometimes it's okay to look back as well. And we don't want to lose the emotion that was in football in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. But at the same stretch, we've got to cater in this crazy league that we're in now.
Yeah.
We're competing with, countries that alone club owners. It's finding that balance of creating an environment that is fit for the Premier League without losing the charm that, as you say, the club's got.
Yeah, I think we have always sort of, before sort of the AL caretaker, we have sort of struck that balance really well. I've always felt we've always sort of kept the charm of the club. It always felt like every time we've spoke to opposition fans, whether it's on the pod or in passing and stuff, they always say that they love coming to the turf because it's not a nice away day, you know what I mean? It's not it's a throwback, and that's what we want. I don't want it to be like Tottenham's ground. Loved it. I was just such a fanboy experience. I loved the drinks that filled up from the bottom. I had chicken and rice at half time. That wasn't a traditional away day for me. That was just like a nice day out. I could have took the family. We could have had a nice 3-course meal on the concourse. But no, I think what you're doing is right. You're upgrading it, but keeping it, to what it should be, which is a tight old, Lancashire Milltown ground. So,
well, one of the classic examples of this though is like, we introduced at the last game to certain areas the nachos hot dog, which it sounds so American, especially versus a pie, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
But they've been a huge success amongst many of the fans, and I'm sure if we sat down 100 Burnley fans and said we want to serve hot dogs, I'm not sure how many would have said brilliant idea. They would have probably just said, "Where's my pie?"
Yeah,
and that's fine. They can still have a pie, but actually, when you taste one of these hot dogs, you go, "Pie's great, but actually, this is not bad at all."
No, I must admit, I did have a Donna meat sausage roll on Friday.
There you go. How was it?
So it was fantastic. I didn't realize what it was until I bit into it, and then I went, "Tastes like kebab. This is brilliant." So
one of the perks of my job is I get to try all this before it comes on.
Lovely.
Oh yeah,
love that. That's a great little perk.
Yeah, bring more of those Donnas over.
So every match day, it's going to be like, we just need to tweak the menu just a little bit more. I think
it's not good for my BMI
though. Yeah. Right. So moving away from the stadium, then onto the fans. So, as fan experience, you're director of fan experience. How engaged are you with fans on social media? Because obviously that's now a major part in sort of a fan experience now. So how engaged are you with the fans on social media? And does what you see and read on there sort of have an effect on your day-to-day actions or your role, for an example?
Yeah, if we categorize this as, if you like, just generally as incoming messages, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we get emails. I get messages on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, text. But obviously, we're very mindful with our presence on social media as to what that is, and that is monitored heavily. And I think one of the misconceptions is that, you know, as a club or an individual, we might not regularly respond or reply or comment on things, but that doesn't mean to say that we're not only looking at those messages but taking them on board. So if we bring things right up to speed, I mean, obviously there were a few things from the City match that we wish we could have done better. And that we've taken our feedback and we've got a spreadsheet here in the office, and it denotes where the message was, whether it was online, whether it was an email, so forth. What categorizing it into, whether it was concourses, food, drink, prices, what was it? And then we're just filtering down through that. Now we've got an insight manager here who's just putting that into a format that allows us to now respond. We made a response at 5 o'clock today that went out to every single person that attended the match, just apologising for some of the failures from the game, judging by our own high standards. And I think one of the challenges is, you know, we've got Levy that have come in and helped us with catering from this season onwards. But the way that the fixtures for our pre-season worked out, they were all abroad. Now, normally a club has the opportunity of having a bit of a pre-season test match, if you like, in the sense that we had all those self-ordering units, new cookers, new catering, new lounges, new offerings, new staff. And we didn't have a chance to test any of that until the first person walked through the door. And that was regrettable. But in terms of getting back to your question, we do monitor everything. And in terms of staying in touch, like every single person that's written to us will get a response from us. And we will try where we can to personalize and make sure that we're addressing the actual needs that they've got. We're not just blanketing. One of my team, for instance, as you can imagine, both Vincent and Alan get a lot of personal emails, mail, stuff through the post. And for Alan, you know, one of my guys looks after every single thing that comes in. So it's actioned and read, and then what happens is that a response is sent from Alan that Alan has approved. There's not too many clubs, I don't think, in the Premier League where the chairman is aware. So we have a spreadsheet that he can access anytime he wants, and he knows what mails come in that day and what the proposed responses are. And if he's not happy with any of those responses, then he'll let us know. And genuinely, in many cases, he'll respond personally. Now it might be from one of my guys, but it's been his response because he's wanted to pick that up. So, and I'll do the same. I've met many people here in the club who have wanted to cover. You know, we're very happy to meet face to face and to chat things through. And of course, we'll probably lead on to this, but we've also got the fan advisory board, which we'll talk a little bit about, I'm sure, coming up. But that's also one of our thermometers, if you like, of making sure that we really have got a good idea as to what the fan base are doing. But just to be crystal clear, please don't think that we are not aware of or ignore or aren't interested in the views shared by the fans on any form of social media. You know, I think it'd be fair to say some of it's just total nonsense, right? Because I think it'd be fair to say that's the same with anything, right? I mean, it doesn't matter.
Even we get that on TurfCast,
right? You know, you're not going to please all the people all the time. We get that. We want to try and please everyone all the time, but actually sometimes, I mean, I got a response this week from the City game. And it listed someone being photographed with a number of key individuals that were here on the game, and ended up just complaining about the heat of a sausage, you know. But actually, if you look at the content of that email and what that person got by way of fan experience, pictures with the chairman, with JJ, perfect. I mean, think about that. You go to City or Man United or Arsenal, it's just not going to happen, right? These guys are out there, you know, and so that's, you know, so you can't, you know, we got it wrong because the sausage was a bit cold. Can I control that? Yeah, to a degree, but
to a degree.
No
pun intended. Yeah. Excellent. One thing I do want to talk to you about is because Burnley's very much a community club. The turf itself is smack bang in the middle of the town, just a stone's throw from the town centre. The club means so much to so many people. If the club wasn't there, for example, it would just have such a detrimental effect on not just the mental health because of how much we like it, but financially and things like that on the town. So the community aspect of it is massive, and I know you do a lot in the community as a club. But obviously on the flip side of that, I know there's a big thing at the minute of trying to improve the brand. I know people don't like using that word, but I think we've just got to get used to that word now in football. Football clubs are brands. And the exposure that we're trying to increase in places like America and Australia. obviously America, with Alan and Do Perfect and JJ and stuff like that. Is it difficult to do one and the other, or are you finding it sort of like a difficult balancing act to keep that community club feel and still be able to push out this exposure in America? Is basically what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it is one that's very relevant because we can't shy away from the fact that firstly we've got American ownership, so it would be kind of naive of us to imagine that they want to keep the club a secret from the US, right? Yeah. The other is that the partners that we have been partnering with have a genuine interest in the community side of things. We also need to be mindful, again, referring back to this idea that in order to be competitive in the Premier League, we have to find sources of income that will help us be competitive. And everybody knows that one of those ways is increasing fan base, particularly abroad, through merchandising and other events that allow us to continue to, one, raise exposure, but also to raise finances in order to continue to compete. So you're right, it is a challenge because we know firsthand by being here for the last couple of years or so. I mean, you can probably tell from my accent, I don't come from Burnley. I live down in Surrey, but I'm here every week, all week. I travel up and down every week. And I can tell you that I have genuinely grown to love not only the club, but the town and the people in it. And when I'm south, people say to me, what's Burnley like? And I said, it's really straightforward. If I get a puncture in Surrey, I'll get beat by the 5 cars behind me and told to do one. I get a puncture in Burnley, the first 5 cars will pull over and say, do you need a hand? That's the difference in the people, right? So I understand how important this club is to the people. I understand that as you say, the results of the club can affect the emotions of the town and the income of the town in a dramatic way. And I think that Alan, and you've probably seen the film, I think you get a bit of an insight to who Alan is. Alan cares. This is not an American owner who lives in New York. Sure, he has a home there, but it's rented out. He doesn't even live there. He lives here. Yeah. And he cares about this. He eats in every restaurant in the town, even goes into pubs. He's here and he's vested, and we get that feeling. And if I can assure you, if we weren't, we're reminded every day. So you're right, finding that balance. And one of my charges is to increase exposure in the US particularly. And yes, JJ, Do Perfect, and others that will come will continue to work with us on that. But my balancing act is to always ensure that we keep the balance absolutely right. Do we want coach loads of Americans turning up and enjoying turf? Yes, but only because they're enjoying it alongside the Burnley fans who are already having a fantastic fan experience. And if we lost one for the other, then I'll have failed in my responsibilities for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's always interesting to see how something that's two completely different things sort of like work together. So it's interesting to hear that. You mentioned Alan there, though. Obviously, you said you came in with ALK. What's your relationship with Alan like?
Great. Yeah, Alan is just everything. He's like Ron Seal, right? Those who are our younger audience won't understand that, but he is exactly who he says he is. I've known Alan for 30 years, and I wouldn't be here if I thought Alan was a fraud or a sham, or he was out to fleece the club of money. He is 100% vested into this club. And I don't mean monetarily, I mean his whole life. He spends 20 hours a day thinking, working, and building everything he can to make sure that this club exceeds all expectation. And the only limit that will be placed on Alan is what others place on him, because he sees no limit. He sees no limit. And he is true to everything. And I think, I was here when the very difficult decision to release Sean from his contract, and I saw the range of emotions that Alan went through around that, and the challenge that was, and seeing some of the comments, which is, you expect and you see, but, we're still just people, right? And trying to do the right thing. And knowing his master plan, he's like a chess player who's always 5 moves ahead. You're looking at why he's just moved the king towards towards the pawn, but he's already 5 ahead of you. So when that decision came, he already had 3 managers that he knew could come to the club. It wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction. And that's a whole different topic. But my point is, it just shows you that he doesn't do things irrationally. He doesn't do things without a considerable amount of thought, understanding, and care for the club.
Yeah.
Everything that we do in the club, every meeting that we have, everything that we speak about is what's best for the club. It's not what's best for Alan or his partners. It's what's best for the club.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think to be fair, I don't think even after watching, before watching the documentary, I never for 1 second thought he didn't care. But I don't think anybody can level that at Alan and say you don't care about the club after watching the documentary. Like, it's turned into a bit of a meme now. But the fact that he's even wiping the tables, you know, when he's been shouted at in the fan zone, you can clearly see that he cares, and obviously he lives locally as well. I don't think anyone can accuse Alan of not caring.
yeah, he's totally in.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. I'm not disparaging other owners because I'm sure they're all in too. But I think Alan is a special owner of the club.
Yeah. Well, I've watched a couple of documentaries, and they have some sort of involvement, and it sort of did feel sometimes. I'm not naming documentary, but sometimes it could feel staged and sort of they've sort of preempted. Right, we're going to put you in this situation. This is how it's going to play out. Blah blah blah. But that felt genuine. The interactions that he had. And
they're totally genuine. And you could ask any member of staff who is here, they would say the same to you. And I'll give you one example of how this is true. So when we were finishing the Longside Lounge 2 seasons ago, it was during COVID, and our building project ran over. Alan was in London with Stu Hunt, and I was here with a number of the other guys. And we knew that we needed literally every hand to get that lounge ready for that first game of that season. Alan drove from London. He left about 8 o'clock in the evening, and he got here after midnight. And he, along with Stu and our family members, were scraping paint off of that floor ourselves alongside the contractors and the cleaners till 4:30 a.m. that morning.
Yeah.
Right. You saw him shoveling snow off the pitch. This is not for the cameras.
Yeah.
It's not staged. It's who he is.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the breakdown thing, and I've been with him. I've been there. I've got the T-shirt. If someone's broken down, he pulls over.
Yeah.
That's who he is.
Yeah.
So, obviously everyone will reach their own conclusions as to who Alan is, but I've known him for 30 years. I've actually known him longer than anybody at this club, including his partners, and I know who he is.
That's good. That's good. Obviously, the general feeling at the beginning was, who's this guy? Like this was everybody that came in. It was very much, who the hell are these guys? Yeah. What are they doing? They don't know. The snippets on the documentary, there's them sound bites. They don't know Burnley. They don't get it. They never will. But I mean, I'm not just saying this because you're on here and it's going to get recorded. But you guys get it. You can see that. Before we move on to the next question, you guys get it. And that was before the documentary. It took a couple of months to bed in and realise, but then after that summer, the rebuild.
Trust takes, you have to earn trust.
Yeah.
We didn't come in expecting everyone to trust us. It was needed to be, especially off the back of other ownership groups. We understand that, but trust has to be earned.
Yeah, I agree with that. Trust does have to be earned, but I also think that you shouldn't also come into a situation and suddenly be not trusted. Whereas I think there was some sides of that. But I do feel like we'll come out the other side of it. Yeah,
I don't even think it's the town. I just think that's football.
Yeah, true. No, I agree. I do agree.
We were only a few months into our tenure here when the Super League thing blew up.
Yeah.
And suddenly we were as bad as all the other owners. And honestly, we were actually, I don't know whether you remember, but that was the Man United game. And we were at Man United in the boardroom when that news broke. And we didn't understand why everyone was disappearing on their phones, all of the other ownerships. And then, of course, our phones blew up. And there we were, in the middle of one of the clubs that was actually, propagating it, really. So that was an interesting afternoon. And you're right. We came in and, I was in property. These guys are in banking, finance, hedge funds, right? I mean, we don't profess to know exactly how to run a football club, but we know how to run a business. And I know there's a big debate about that. But if you can't get the club and the finances right, you're dead in the water. Then you add an element like Vince, who knows his football reasonably well. You've got a good combination, right? I mean, players are players. Alan wouldn't profess to know what the proficiencies of any new proposed player is, but he relies on his technical teams and Vincent. So everybody's got their speciality. It's when you come together and you put all that together that you get really good traction, hopefully.
Yeah, fair enough. Sounds like you've built a good team, but we knew that already.
Well, we'll be honest, there's a lot of people who are not at the club now who were, and they're great people, but people had a choice as to whether or not to switch gears a little bit or not. Yeah. And, we've got a lot of people that are really in gear now. So, yeah. And we're just getting going. This isn't a fait accompli. This is not us done. This is us just getting going. Right? We had the hiccup of relegation. We had an incredible season to come back. We've got the hardest game in the league out of the way. I think we played pretty well. And we're excited. But no one's resting on any laurels.
No. So happy days. Happy days. Moving on, I know we've mentioned it a couple of times, but mission to Burnley. Obviously, it's gone down quite well with the fan base. I know I enjoyed it. I saw yourself in it quite a few times. But particularly enjoyed the bits driving to Ewood. Saying, well, when I wave, I only wave with all my fingers. I remember laughing at that bit. But how's the documentary gone down within the club? I presume you've all seen it now and all enjoyed it.
Yeah, the club employees have all seen it, and I was talking to some of the coaching staff just yesterday about it. And obviously, no one feels like a natural in front of the camera. But what's interesting is that, as you'll appreciate, to create 4-hour-long episodes, I have no idea how many hours of footage they took, but there were cameras with us all over the place all the time. It gets edited down to, as you know, a final edition that you've seen. And so for most people, it's been quite funny because most people on their phones now have got some kind of picture of themselves, behind a wine bottle or behind a door or something where they've just walked through a room or something. I think it's brought a sense of togetherness. And I think, honestly, the thing I would say about it that I've heard, and that it's not dissimilar to what we've already spoken about, everyone knows who Alan is and his partners. They know who they are. They know they're genuine people. And the thing that we're anticipating was that would come across, because it's like sometimes documentaries can be made, and if there's an agenda, you can make somebody look really quite goofy, right? But I think that Alan and his partners and his family came across exactly as they are, and that's the thing I think that's really pleased the staff members, really.
Like you said, the documentary does, I think, it deliver. Like I say, we've previously spoke to Matt about it, Matt Hodgson, who's one of the producers on the show, and he explained what he wanted to get out of it, and he said he was surprised at the level of access and honesty that he got from people on camera. That what you see on camera is what you get.
I've come down from having a shower with my hair all over the place and no top on, and there's been a camera at the bottom of the stairs. I'm like,
that is actually so hilarious.
Yeah, I was like, is this really footage people want to see?
Yeah. So in terms of a Burnley fan base, like we waxed lyrical about it to Matt, and saying that we never had stuff like this, and this felt like a gear change from the club of, right, they know what they want to do, they know what the plan is, and this is part of the plan. What were you hoping the documentary would bring to the club? What were the reasons behind the documentary? And what do you think it will bring back to the club now it's out there?
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, I'm not absolutely sure exactly what it was that Alan wanted to bring out of it. He had a lot of influence on the editing. That was an important thing to him. So obviously what's come out, the messages that have come out or what people have heard are what Alan wants to hear. Honestly, from my point of view, and I know I keep referring to it, but it was more a case of just letting everybody know how hard we're working, how much we care, and how much we're vested into this from a personal point of view. I don't mean financially. I mean like the sacrifice that we all make. I mean, I don't see my family for 4 to 5 days at a time, and sometimes 7 or 8 days at a time, and that has been the case every week for 2.5 years. So, and I'm not looking for plaudits here. I'm just saying, I know that. I know the sacrifice that others have made. Stu Hunt has just moved his entire family here last Friday from Utah. He's now living here as well and taken up a position as president here in the club. So again, that's a whole nother family that have been uprooted from the US and brought here because he wants to be here. He's traveling back and forth. It's one thing driving to Surrey, it's a whole other thing flying back to Utah, right? So,
Yes.
so that was my hope, was that people would see us not acting like we cared, because I don't think you can act for 4 hours that this means a lot to us. It's because it does.
Yeah, you can soon, on some documents, you can soon sniff out the propaganda. To want of to use a strong word, you can really sniff out propaganda when you see it, and that never felt like that from minute one. It felt really honest and open, and
I think so.
And as I say, I work with a couple of lads that are like, Man City fans and, work in the city, or, Liverpool fans, and they watched it and they're like, oh, I really didn't expect to see that from the club. I get what the club are trying to do, and it's actually put the club back in a good light. We sometimes end up being thrown in the wrong side of the light sometimes, our club, and it's, it was nice to see that side of it come out, and we're actually being projected in a positive light. So I think our own fans,
it goes back to a little bit. It goes back to what you were asking me earlier about the American side of things. The challenge is that for us at the moment is, if you ask an American which football team they support, it's going to be one of the top 4 or 6, almost certainly, right? And we understand that. We want Burnley to become a household name in the US, because that should be the go-to team. And the only way you do that is that you play great attacking football, you have good results, but you've got that hard work ethic. It goes a little bit back to what we were saying about JJ and his wife Keela. I spent 3 days with them before they joined us. And their sole purpose was to see what our involvement as a club was in the community.
Yeah.
So we spent 3 hours in the food bank just understanding how it works. We went into various different community projects. So of the 3 days that I had them, 2.5 days of that was spent in the community. Yeah. And you can see he comes here. Yeah, he goes to the Royal Dice because it makes great Instagram, but actually he goes there when the cameras aren't there. And he goes and talks to Justine, and he gets to know people in the pub, and he cares, right? I mean, he left on Friday night, and he just said to me, if there's anything that you or the club need, then you call me straight away. And it doesn't mean, do you need money? Or is there some TikTok I can make for you? He wants to know how he can help. It's like his baseball caps. He's selling those in the US, and all of the net proceeds of those go to the community. He doesn't need to do that. He can still swan in here and be the big guy and leave the big guy, but that's not who he is, although he is huge.
I won't argue with that.
No. Well, we were having a meeting the other day. It was like, we need some security for JJ. So who do you give to JJ for security?
JJ didn't need security.
It's like,
no one in Burnley's got. I mean, there might be a few brave souls, but I don't think they'd even contemplate as soon as he got next to JJ.
No. Sorry, I know we're sort of bobbing around a bit, but it's just, it's like it's all interwoven. Do you know what I mean? It's like no one person is here with an agenda. Yeah. Or if there is an agenda, it's just to make this club the best it can possibly be. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Definitely. On JJ Watt and obviously Do Perfect as well. Tell us more about how they came about and that sort of thing that you want to achieve with it.
So in terms of how they came about, we've obviously got people that introduce us to these types of people all the time. And some people you wouldn't want invested into a club, and others are interesting. And then you get people like these guys who have got such a genuine, real interest in the club and the town. Do Perfect. I mean, this was their first visit this weekend. Again, they've fallen in love with the place. They absolutely, and they totally get it as well. So once the introductions were made, and you'll appreciate, I mean, you can see it across many different clubs at the moment, and, different people from sporting backgrounds, golfers are getting involved, American football players are getting involved, film stars are getting involved. Do Perfect was something that we always felt would be a really, really wonderful junior sponsor. Yeah. And in fact, I have had emails from even Man United fans saying that their children have told them they don't want a Man United shirt this season. They want a Do Perfect. So they didn't necessarily say Burnley, but they want a Do Perfect shirt.
Yeah, so my little lad calls it his Do Perfect shirt as well.
and that says volumes about the power of that sponsor. And we've got adults coming in saying, what's the biggest size you do a Do Perfect shirt in? Right? Unfortunately, most of them are not going to fit into it. I want you to be clear about one thing, which is that this isn't like if someone knocks on the door and says, hey, we're interested in being part of this club. We go, oh, yeah, great. Sign up here.
Yeah.
This is a really considered partnership. What value does it give? I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head what the total number of followers those two groups of people have. Because remember, we often talk about JJ and we forget the fact that he's married to Kialia, who is herself an international USA soccer player, or was. She recently retired, right? And if you took her on a tour of a city in the US, they'd be asking for her signature.
Yeah.
Right. So she brings her own followers. JJ's obviously got his followers. Dude Perfect got this. But we're well over 160 million followers across all platforms for those individuals.
Yeah.
So when he's posting about being at the club, or when Dude Perfect are filming, which is what they did here, one of their stunts, everything is linked to Burnley.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's great exposure for us. So later in the year, we're going to run some competitions about bringing some fans from the US over here for an all expenses trip paid, and we'll take them on the typical Burnley tour, and we'll put them into Growood, and we'll bring them to a game, and we'll give them a great time. We'll dress them head to toe in Burnley stuff, and we'll send them back. Well, if I try and launch something like that, I do it from my Instagram or Twitter account. Yeah, it's not going to reach anyone. JJ puts it out, Dude Perfect put it out, Kialia put it out, and we have other partners coming. Yeah. Suddenly we're getting 160 million people with eyes on that.
Yeah.
So, what I'm really conscious about, and I know we've touched on it, is that isn't my absolute focus. It's one of my focuses, right? My absolute focus is making sure that every fan who comes to this ground has the best experience they can have. And that's going to be 99%. That's people from within 8 miles of the club, right? So I don't want people to think, oh, all he's talking about is getting new fans. What I'm talking about is making new fans around the world, so that we can put Burnley literally on the map.
Yeah, we understand that from our point, like mine and Joe's point of view. We understand that there's only 22,000 seats at Turf Moor. It's a very small ceiling that. Eventually, there's not much more you can do to get more bums on seats, unless we know, as the memes usually go on Twitter, is you put a 30-second tier up Bob Lord. That's all. Seems to be the running joke, which is, it might happen. Who knows? But
physically, it can be done. But it, I mean, this is a really big topic, isn't it? I mean, what do you do? Do you build more seats and then you leave them empty? What is Burnley's capacity? And the chairman's really mindful about that. Will there be increased capacity in due course? Well, that depends on the success of the club. But yes, I mean, we wouldn't say no to that. It's not to say it wouldn't, but it would have to be. We do not want to make the same mistakes other clubs have made, that when they have a little bit of success, they go boom, let's spend £500 million on a new stadium, and then you can't buy any players, you can't pay anyone, and the thing goes belly up, right? So we've been to enough grounds around, in the last couple of seasons, particularly last season, where we're taking more fans than they've got, right? So we again, this is the business acumen that's so important to running a football club.
Let's say we understand the soul, like the pushing with JJ and Do Perfect. We understand that we're gonna reap the rewards of that in maybe 10 years time, when these sort of 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13-year-olds then have their own sort of money and then decide to come to Burnley, and whatnot. So we get that side of it all. But I just want to move things on back to Burnley again, more local, bring it all back in again. Fan Advisory Board, obviously that was, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was a Premier League directive, wasn't it? That every, so we went early with that, didn't we, in anticipation that we'd be back in the Premier League.
Yeah.
What you're hoping to get out of the Fan Advisory Board, and is the ideas that them guys put to you, are they taken on board? Do you run with a lot of the ideas, or is it more just a, like you said, just a conversational piece between the club and the fans as a brief sounding board? Explain that a little bit more, because I think some fans are still a little bit unsure and sceptical of the idea of the Fan Advisory Board.
Yeah, happy to address that. So first of all, yes, we did go early. That almost seemed a little arrogant, I suppose. It wasn't meant to be. We weren't saying, well, clearly we're going to be in the Premier League next season. Actually, what we decided was that as a model, that was really good, no matter which division we were in, that we felt that actually the Premier League were onto something really good with this, which was making sure that we had a real connection with fans that was helpful in directing how the club is run, or implementing ideas that the club were considering that were either good, bad, or indifferent as far as a group of fans were concerned. So yeah, we went early, and we went with the brief guidance that was given. And obviously, having been promoted, that became a requirement of the Premier League at the 1st of June. So I attended some training meetings in London, and took on board where we needed to be going forward. It's not legislative, but it is a requirement, and it's quite wide. And the reason for a fan advisory board, just so we're clear, if you think about the role of any advisory board, it is only that. It is to advise owners of businesses things that could be or should be done to improve the state of the business, or in this case, the football club. Yeah. It doesn't mean to say that everything that they say we do, and it's a two-way street. Definitely, it's not just them saying. And I think this is really important to understand about an advisory board. It's not just a one-way street of the fan advisory board going, "What about this?" or "What about that?" or "You do this wrong, you're rubbish at that." It's much more of a collaborative arrangement where we give them an opportunity to talk about, and we spoke about this earlier in the podcast, about many of the things that are trending on the socials and what's happening with the supporter groups and the fan boards and all that kind of stuff. We talk about some of that stuff. But what we also want to take is the chance to be able to update them about things that are going on in the club or that we're thinking about doing. And if you look at the actual advisory board, we have the largest advisory board in the Premier League. Most have between 8 and 16 tops. And we're the only fan advisory board presently that has junior members on. So we've got 4 under the age of 18. The board is split almost entirely 50-50 between male and female. Every age group is categorized. We're mindful that we have 2 supporters on that board with disabilities, and 2 from the South Asian community as well, also from the LGBT communities. And so what we're trying to get away from, I think previously in many clubs, and I think that Burnley was probably in the same pot with this, was that if we're not careful, it's really easy to get the lens through which most supporters look through tends to be a white, middle-aged man, sometimes of privilege, if you want. It's that kind of, we're trying to get away from that. There are white, middle-aged men on that board, but there are also a huge diverse range of people. So when we ask somebody about, so let me give you one example, okay? So first meeting, we had one of our junior members on there who the chairman, and by the way, the chairman, I chair that, the chairman attends, or one of his partners, and they have a slot. We also have the playing side that come along, and then I pick various people from the club to present different ideas. And chairman was in this first meeting. We've had 3 so far. We've got another one in September, well, 4 a year. And one of the junior members said to the chairman, he said, "What questions are there?" at the end. And she said, "Can I ask a question? Why do you have 2 Instagram accounts, one for the men's team and one for the women's team? One has less than 5,000 followers, one has like 85,000 followers." And of course, he did the obvious thing, which is he looked at me, which I had no answer. And he just looked at her and he said, "I will amalgamate those accounts with immediate effect." And the social media team stood off their chairs because obviously it's not actually quite as straightforward as that. And so but within 2 weeks or so, both of those accounts were amalgamated. And so that came from a 14-year-old girl on the board. And so what we're hoping is that what advice we're getting through that board, it does represent the fans' feelings, but it is put forward in a way that is advisory. So we could have a moaning group or a complaining group or a whinging group or a blaming group or any number of other groups, but we're trying to look forward and we're trying to come up with solutions, not talk about all the problems. And we don't mean by that to exclude the supporters groups, because that's not what we're doing. There are members of supporters groups that are on the board, and there are many who are not. That's actually part of the plan. We understand that heads of supporter groups represent large portions of supporters, but actually we wanted to try and get every single person is a season ticket holder, and every single person lives in Burnley. Then there was questions about what about the ones that live in London or New York? These are things that we'll address. And we can evolve the board, and we can change the board, and we can make changes to the way that we operate. But at the moment, we're entirely compliant and actually leading out, I believe, in the way in which the fan advisory board meets. Now, last thing to say on this is that doesn't mean to say that it is our only source of communication with the fans. We can still have fan forums, we can still have fan engagement, but the fan engagement and fan forums need to understand that we need to work together collaboratively to come up with solutions about things. And hopefully throughout this podcast, it will become evident to most people, I hope, that we are serious about finding solutions. I'm not coming on here and we're not going onto the fan advisory board to brush stuff off or yes, and do nothing. Can we solve every problem? No. Will we come up with really great ideas? I hope so. And hopefully those will complement the vision that the ownership have. So hopefully that's answered some of it. There might be other things. If there's anything I didn't address, I'm happy to.
To be honest, you've covered it all there, really. Like I just wanted to sort of iron out a few sort of like
it's good to do it.
Myths around it online. I think some people have been abused for being in the fan advisory board. Some people get
here's something
horrible DMs about, and I wanted to help them to
So here's the thing, right? So I've held off putting a webpage up about this because, which by the way we're required to do, and I have that mandate to do before the end of August. I don't want to go into any specifics or details, but think about Everton and their last season. The abuse suffered by some of their FAB members was abhorrent. And I look around that room of 22 people who are giving up their time and energies to spend 3 or 4 hours every quarter with us. And I don't want to expose them any more unnecessarily than I need to what's coming. But at the same stretch, the rubber has to hit the road somewhere, right? And I don't want to use them as a foil is what I'm saying, right? And so we're meeting with each of them to say, right, we're almost ready to launch this page. Do we put your photo on? Do we put your full name on? We're certainly not going to put all your contact details on. But my point is that let's be honest, in social and in a town like this, everyone knows everyone somehow, right?
Yeah.
It's not difficult. And I'm certainly concerned about the youngsters, And so what I don't want to happen is for the FAB members to become abused unnecessarily in a way that is not what was intended. We want this to be a positive, forward-looking, collaborative way of seeing the fans supporting the FAB to put forward things that in this two-way street, the club and the fans can meet somewhere. And if they're abusive of that situation, then we're really falling foul of ourselves and actually not living up to who I think we are as a club and as a fan base. And you're always going to get that minority, and we will help deal with that. We've got ways of monitoring those accounts and cancelling out some of that naysaying and the inappropriate stuff. But, we don't want to become the nanny state. It's just difficult finding that balance. Which is why we've not been, I wouldn't say we're hiding the FAB and we're not trying to be evasive around it. It hasn't been a requirement until June 1st. We've done it off our own back. So we don't feel like we owe anybody an explanation, but at the same stretch, we're doing incredible things in that fan advisory board. And in order for that to continue, it needs to be respected. And the lives,
for the record, like myself and Joe, we're not on the fan advisory board, but I just want to say that we will support anyone who is and make sure that they're not getting abuse online or in anything. We always try and promote a nice fan base, a good positive fan base, and we'll always push that. So we'll always sort of help them on the fan advisory board, and I think Joe will echo that before. But
we also can't avoid the fact there will be emotive things discussed on there, not everyone's going to agree with, and I completely understand that. But it's how we go about it and how we respect those people that are giving up their time and energies, really.
Yeah, definitely. I do agree with everything that's just been said then. But one of the emotive things that was discussed recently through a fan advisory board and changed for a fan advisory, I think the fan advisory board had a little bit to do with it, was the loyalty point system. A lot of people were quite angry that they suddenly lost a lot of points. I think me and Nathan discussed it on a podcast. So I think you might have actually discussed it with Sam, Nathan. I can't remember.
Yeah, I did.
That it's probably the right thing to do because it gets rid of people hoarding points and it rewards people that have been going for the last, I think, 5 years. But yeah, do you just want to explain the thoughts behind the move to the newer system?
Yeah, I think we all agreed at the beginning of that FAB meeting that there was almost a no-win situation here, which is often the case with these types of things. you please a certain part of the fan base and then you disappoint the other and vice versa. So we recognize that it wasn't exactly a no-win situation, because I think that we've actually come out with a solution that was well thought through. And actually the way that we approached it with the FAB is that we kind of gave them options. We said we can leave it the same, we can make some really radical changes, or we can find some halfway house. But what's the aim? What's the aim of the changes? Is it just to annoy the fans? Of course not. Is it to prejudice older fans? No, not at all. But what we took to the fan advisory board was the vision that if any process in a club, and let's be honest, this is a process that plagues almost every club, right? And I don't know that actually any club, I'm not saying they haven't, but I don't know that any club has actually really nailed this, and that it's like the perfect model, and otherwise we'd follow it. So we had to look at what works for Burnley, and the reality is that we actually have quite an old fan base, right? Which just generically means that actually a lot of that fan base genuinely have a lot of points. And actually, for the data that we have, quite a number of them didn't actually travel. So it was almost like, I mean, obviously I'm not saying that they didn't ever go, but what I'm saying is that actually, I mean, it's even like, sell out on Friday here. We still had over 1,000 people that didn't show up. It's like, what? I mean, I just don't understand that. Do you know what I mean? We've got people literally queuing up begging us for tickets outside, and 1,000 people didn't show up. So you multiply that with a wet away Tuesday fixture that they look outside, no, I'm not going tonight. Couple that with the fact that what we keep getting is expressions that families and young people we're going to have to be alive for another 50, 60 years before they could ever qualify to go. Yeah. And so what we felt was the right thing to do, and the fan advisory board helped us to shape that view, was that surely the most recently active, regardless of age or how long that's been coming, have been supporting the club, should have the first opportunity or an equal opportunity to be able to apply for away tickets. And so it really wasn't any more complicated than that. We could spend 2 hours talking about it, but the reality is that was the bottom line, was that it doesn't prejudice the active, recently supporting fans. And surely in any walk of life, that's who should be, I mean, we're all sick and tired, aren't we, of I was going to name someone then, but a TV provider who always offers, exclusive deals for those who have shown no loyalty to the brand, while the rest keep paying through the nose. Yeah. And that's kind of what we're trying to get away from. It's like, well, actually, we're not saying to the old customers, if you want, you're not important to us, which has been a lot of the sentiment that we've got is, oh, you're ageist, you're discriminating against the elderly. Goodness me, that's not what we're trying to do at all. But what I am doing is I'm looking into the eyes of the youngsters, many who don't have the same color face as mine, and seeing a wide range of players on the pitch that they've never been able to come to Turf Moor and see before and go and watch them play. Yeah. And that's our future. Yeah. So when we talk about Alan looking forward, he's wanting to ensure that the fan base that goes to away matches as well is actually really representative of the cross section of who is not only playing on the pitch, but is coming here and watching at Turf Moor. Yeah. And we felt like that was really pretty much one of the only ways that we felt was a fair way of doing it.
Yeah, it was good. Like, I fell foul to the loyalty point scheme. I went from sort of just over 10,000 points to 800. But that's just my previous, my working schedule just didn't fit in with traveling. So I just had a young lad, he's just turning 2 this year. So it's fine. But my loyalty has now been rewarded for the last 5 years. Like, I've not been as loyal as someone that's been going for the last 5 years. So I shouldn't get the same level of access as someone that has been more loyal. So I understand it, even though it affected me. But I went from I could just wander up and get a ticket whenever I wanted. I didn't have to go to all the games. I could just go and jump to the front of the queue, and someone would miss out that went to the last 20 away game. So I get it, I understand it, and I think it's a really positive move. And I'm all for it, even though, like I said, it really did affect me, and it has affected me. I'm going to have to sort of build it up again, which is fine. It is what it is.
Well, I think perspective is really important here. Just the last point on this is that if you look at last season, for every away game, what do we have? 23 away games plus the cups. I don't want to be misquoted here, but we either sold out on 3 or 4 games away. Yeah. Right. So actually, technically, to 19 or 20 games, you could have got a ticket to any of those games. I know that there were big key crunch matches that everybody would have liked to have been at, but actually we'd have never been able to sell tickets to everyone who wanted to go to those anyway. No. But actually, probably 19 or 20 of those games you could have gone. if you wanted to, you know.
Yeah.
I was
It's
there
good.
at Bournemouth. I didn't see anyone down there.
No, I'm all for it. One last question from myself. Safe standing.
Yeah.
Where are we on this? The fans want it. I want it. It's now safe and practical. We're allowed to use it. Are we going to get it? Because I think it would really, really, especially in that sort of a Barnfield section, that's sort of become our little singing section now, as it were. And I think it would really, really, I mean, they already stand there now as it is anyway. So I think it would really benefit that stand going forward. Where are we with that? And are we going to get it?
So simple fact is that I can't comment too much on it. Genuinely, I think you've seen tonight. I've tried to answer every question I can. Our director of operations is dealing with that at the moment, and I will tell you that the club is supportive. Yep. So will we get there? I can only imagine yes, but I don't know when. But we're not saying no, and we're not saying that it won't be soon. We've got some well-documented issues with other people around the stadium standing when we wish they wouldn't. It spoils. I know they feel they have the right to do that. Technically, they don't, and they do spoil the view for others. Is the solution to create safe standing? Of course it is. Will we do that? Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to know that when I used to go to games, I grew up a Brighton fan. I grew up in the South Coast. And I don't remember ever having a seat before I was 18. I don't think, So I mean, it's in our DNA. I get it. I can't tonight say to you, yes, it's going to be 15th of November and we're all sorted. It's just not that close. But we're not saying no. I mean, we are devising plans, and Doug, who's our director of operations, is working closely with Alan and ownership about how to do that. So it will come.
That's fine. It's positive. It's positive news. It's what fans want to hear.
Yeah. Any ideas where? I know you said there's not too much you can say on it at the minute. Is any ideas where you think it would be if it did come in? I know Nathan then mentioned the Barnfield section. I know there's the lower tier of the long side, as we traditionally call it, as well.
Yeah. I would be guessing, but I would think that the Barnfield stand makes the most obvious sense. But whether or not Doug decides as an operational side is entirely up to him, and we'll be guided by his guidance on that. Yeah.
Yep, fair enough.
It makes logical sense, but that doesn't mean to say that that's where it will be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fine. That's answered that question. And I say it's just another positive update. It seems to rear its head and then vanish for another 6 months.
Yeah, I think we were a bit shy to start with. There were a few clubs who put their hands up and said, we'll try it. And, I'm not going to lie, we probably wanted to see what their reactions were, how it got on. We had enough of our own stuff going on without adding that in as well. But as I say, looking forward, I'm confident something will be arranged.
Great. Right. I think that's probably about a right place to wrap things up.
Sure.
I just want to say on behalf of myself and Joe and TurfCast, really, really appreciate you taking your time to talk to us. I know you've got a busy schedule and you're out fighting the good fight of fan experience. But no, we really do appreciate it. And thanks for taking time. If you want to add anything, Joe?
No, just same as you, mate. Thank you for coming on, Russell. We do appreciate it. It's good to get somebody from within the club to talk about things happening in the club. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, mate.
Well, all I can say in closing, guys, is firstly, thank you for inviting me on. And I want you and everybody involved to know that this ownership and this playing and management team, they don't know how to lose in their life. So losing will be a very bitter pill for them to swallow. So hopefully that will be good ingredients for us all in going forward.
Great.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Russell.
Good to be with you.
Bye.
Back for Arfield. What a bowling! Scott Arfield! He's been threatening that recently. And all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end. Burnley win the next ball. It's a roaring.